text message was short, just a few words. To anyone else, it might have seemed like an odd, fleeting thought, the kind of thing sent in a hurry. But for those who knew her, it was a scream in the dark. It read, "It's following me. I don't know what to do. Tell them I tried." Moments later, she was gone, vanishing into the kind of silence that leaves no answers, only questions. That silence was deafening. The road she took that night stretched endlessly, lined with shadows that seemed to move if you looked long enough. She was last seen heading home, or so everyone thought. But as the minutes passed and then hours, it became clear something had gone terribly wrong. When the search began, no one could agree on where to look first. Friends and family frantically called her phone, but every attempt was met with the same result: silence. Her car was gone, her belongings untouched. And then there was the message, haunting, cryptic, and terrifying. Was it a warning, a plea for help, or the last words of someone who knew they had run out of time? What would drive someone to send a message like that in their final moments? And what or who was she so afraid of? As investigators pieced together her last known steps, they uncovered a series of events that would lead to more questions than answers. What happened that night would change everything. This is the story of Emily Harper, a story that begins with a simple text and ends in a way no one could have ever imagined. Her final words held a clue, but no one could have predicted where it would lead. On the evening of October 17th, 2019, 26-year-old Emily Harper left her best friend's house after a quiet dinner. Emily wasn't the type to stay out late. She liked routine, predictability, and the comfort of her home. At 9:45 p.m., she texted her roommate, "Heading back now. See you soon." It was the kind of ordinary message we've all sent countless times, the kind you never expect to be your last. Her drive home should have been uneventful, just 12 miles of open road she knew by heart. But somewhere along that route, something happened. At 10:13 p.m., Emily sent a message that no one would understand at first. "It's following me. I don't know what to do. Tell them I tried." By 10:15, she was gone. At first, Emily's friends and family thought she might have had car trouble or gotten lost. But when her phone went straight to voicemail, they knew something wasn't right. By morning, her roommate reported her missing and the search began. The police retraced her steps, following the familiar route she had taken dozens of times before. But as the hours turned into days, the investigation revealed more questions than answers. Emily Harper was a recent graduate, a biology major who had just landed her dream job at a research lab. She was described by everyone who knew her as ambitious, kind-hearted, and fiercely independent. She loved the outdoors, had a passion for photography, and always took the time to check in with her family, especially her younger brother, Sam. To them, Emily was steady, reliable, and grounded. That's why her sudden disappearance was so incomprehensible. Her friends and family were desperate for answers. Why would someone like Emily, who planned every detail of her life so meticulously, suddenly vanish without a trace? And what did her cryptic text message mean? As the investigation unfolded, the picture of Emily's final hours began to take shape, and what it revealed would leave even the most seasoned detectives shaken. The first major clue came just 2 days later. Emily's car was discovered abandoned on a narrow, desolate road deep in the countryside, miles off her intended route. It was parked oddly, with the driver's side door slightly ajar. Inside, investigators found her phone, a water bottle, and a pair of sunglasses in the passenger seat. But Emily was nowhere to be found. And then there were the footprints, muddy, erratic, and leading away from the car into the dense forest beyond. The discovery of the car deepened the mystery. Why had Emily driven so far off course? Was she running from something or towards something? And why did the footprints suggest that someone else might have been with her? Investigators were left with nothing but fragments of a story, each more unsettling than the last. And as they dug deeper into Emily's life, they began to uncover details that no one could have anticipated. This is the story of Emily Harper, a young woman with everything to live for, who vanished into the night under circumstances that defied explanation. Her final text message held a key, but unlocking its meaning would unravel a chain of events no one was prepared for. The truth behind her disappearance would leave an entire community shaken to its core. To understand the events of October 17th, 2019, we need to go back to Emily Harper's life in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. By all accounts, Emily's life seemed perfect. She had just started a promising job at a research lab in Ridgewood, a small, tight-knit town where everyone knew everyone. She was balancing her new career with plans to move into her first home, a small cottage on the outskirts of town, surrounded by the woods she loved to explore. But beneath the surface, there were subtle signs that something was wrong. Friends began to notice small changes in Emily's behavior. She started canceling plans, skipping her usual weekend hikes, and avoiding her favorite coffee shop in town. When her best friend Rachel asked if everything was okay, Emily brushed it off, saying she was just tired from work. But Rachel remembered something Emily said the week before she disappeared. She'd mentioned feeling like she was being followed, first as a joke, but then more seriously. Emily's concerns grew more alarming in the final days before she vanished. On the Friday before her disappearance, she called her brother Sam late at night, a time she rarely contacted anyone. She told him she thought she'd seen someone standing outside her cottage, watching her through the trees. When Sam offered to drive over, Emily declined, insisting it was probably nothing. But that wasn't the only incident. A few days later, she confided in Rachel again, mentioning strange noises outside her bedroom window at night, branches snapping, faint rustling, and once, what sounded like footsteps on the gravel path leading up to her door. She thought it might be animals or neighbors, but as the days passed, her unease grew harder to ignore. Looking back, her friends and family began to piece together a pattern, one they hadn't seen clearly at the time. Emily had started locking all her doors and windows obsessively, something she'd never done before. She began keeping her curtains drawn, even during the day. Her co-workers noticed she seemed distracted, often checking her phone as if she were expecting a call or message that never came. And then there was the message Emily sent to Rachel 2 days before she disappeared. It simply read, "I think someone's been in my house." On the night of October 17th, Emily seemed calm when she left Rachel's house. They had spent the evening catching up, sipping tea, and watching a documentary. Rachel would later recall that Emily seemed almost normal again, laughing at her usual jokes and even making plans for the weekend. But there was one moment Rachel couldn't forget, when Emily froze mid-conversation, staring at the front window as though she'd seen something. When Rachel asked what was wrong, Emily shook her head and forced a smile. "Just tired," she said. "I'll be fine." At 10:13 p.m., Emily sent her final text message. Less than 2 minutes later, her phone was disconnected from the network, its location untraceable. Witnesses would later report seeing her car driving erratically along a back road that led away from her home, but no one could say why she would have taken that route. And when her car was found days later, it only deepened the mystery. What was Emily running from that night? Who or what was following her? And how did her final text message connect to the chilling discoveries investigators were about to make? As the search intensified, the truth behind Emily's disappearance would reveal a story more haunting than anyone could have imagined. On October 20th, 2019, 3 days after Emily Harper's disappearance, her car was found abandoned on a desolate stretch of Old Mill Road, a route completely off course from her usual drive home. The road was barely used, winding through dense woods with no nearby homes or businesses. It wasn't the kind of place you'd end up by accident. When officers arrived at the scene, the eerie state of the vehicle raised immediate questions. The positioning of the car was strange. It was parked at an angle, as if it had been stopped in a hurry. The engine was off, but the keys were still in the ignition. The driver's seat was pushed slightly back, as though Emily had gotten out quickly or someone else had been driving. The most unsettling detail was the footprints. Investigators noted two distinct sets. One set matched Emily's shoes heading into the woods, while the other, larger, heavier, seemed to circle the vehicle before following hers into the trees. But the footprints weren't the only clue. On the back seat of the car, officers found a torn piece of fabric, later identified as part of Emily's scarf. The fabric was stained with what appeared to be blood, though forensic testing would take days to confirm. A few strands of hair were tangled in the fabric, raising immediate concerns that a struggle had taken place. But there was no sign of Emily herself, and no indication of where she had gone once she entered the woods. The discovery of the car prompted a massive search effort in the surrounding woods. Teams of officers, volunteers, and K-9 units combed the dense forest for hours, their flashlights cutting through the foggy morning light. The terrain was uneven, with steep drops, thick underbrush, and no clear trails. Despite their efforts, the only evidence they found was Emily's scarf, snagged on a branch about half a mile from the car. About 2 hours into the search, a chilling discovery was made. Just beyond a small clearing, searchers found what appeared to be a hastily dug hole. Inside, they uncovered a plastic bag containing a burner phone, a pair of gloves, and a roll of duct tape. None of the items belonged to Emily. The burner phone, when examined, had only one number saved, and it was disconnected. Whoever left these items behind seemed to be covering their tracks, but the question remained: was it connected to Emily's disappearance, or a coincidence too strange to ignore? While investigators focused on the search, a potential breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A local farmer whose property bordered the woods reported seeing a car matching Emily's on the night of her disappearance. According to his statement, the car had stopped briefly on the side of the road before speeding off. Moments later, he noticed another vehicle, a black SUV, following close behind. The farmer couldn't see the drivers, but he remembered the SUV distinctly because of its broken taillight. The farmer's account raised new possibilities. Was Emily being followed that night? Could the SUV driver have been the person mentioned in her final text message? Investigators ran a search for vehicles with broken taillights in the area, but the results were inconclusive. As the hours turned into days, the case grew colder. But then a second clue emerged, one that would change everything. 6 days after Emily's disappearance, a hiker stumbled upon a chilling discovery deep in the woods, something that would blow the case wide open. But what they found would raise even more questions, pushing the investigation into a terrifying new direction. What happened to Emily Harper that night, and who, or what, was she running from? The answers were closer than anyone realized. On the morning of October 23, 2019, 6 days after Emily Harper's disappearance, a local hiker named Daniel Ward ventured deep into the Ridgewood Forest, far beyond the areas covered by search teams. Daniel had been following a narrow, overgrown trail when he noticed something unusual: a cluster of branches arranged unnaturally, almost like a marker. Beneath them was a shallow depression in the earth, as though something had been hastily buried. What he uncovered would become the most pivotal discovery of the investigation. Inside the bag were several items that immediately alarmed investigators: a blood-stained shirt, a set of zip ties, and a handwritten note. The note, scrawled in hurried, almost illegible handwriting, read, "You should have stayed quiet." The shirt was later confirmed to belong to Emily, based on DNA analysis. The discovery of the note suggested something chilling. Whoever was involved in Emily's disappearance had intended to silence her, but the context of the message was unclear. The discovery of the duffel bag prompted a renewed search in the surrounding area, this time with forensic teams combing every inch of the forest. Less than a mile from where the bag was found, searchers came across something even more unsettling: a rusted metal storage container hidden behind thick shrubbery. The container was locked, but scratches around the edges suggested someone had tried to force it open. When officers finally pried it open, the contents painted a horrifying picture. Inside the container were personal belongings: Emily's backpack, her wallet, and a pair of hiking boots. But there was more. Photographs, dozens of them, scattered across the bottom of the container. The photos were of Emily, taken without her knowledge. Some showed her walking to her car, others captured her through the windows of her cottage. The timestamps on the photos spanned several weeks, proving that Emily had been watched, stalked, long before the night she disappeared. The photos suggested a terrifying level of premeditation. Whoever had taken them had been studying Emily's every move, documenting her routines, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The investigators now believed that Emily hadn't just been a random victim, she had been targeted. But why? And by whom? As the evidence mounted, the timeline of her disappearance began to take shape. Based on witness statements, phone records, and the chilling discoveries in the woods, investigators reconstructed Emily's final hours. After leaving her friend Rachel's house at 10 p.m., Emily had driven toward her cottage. But somewhere along Old Mill Road, she had stopped. The exact reason remains unclear, but her final text, "I need help, someone's following me," suggests she had realized she wasn't alone. The discovery of tire tracks near Emily's car suggested she had been pursued. The black SUV described by the farmer had likely forced her off the road. Investigators now believe Emily fled into the woods on foot, leaving her car behind in a desperate attempt to escape. The second set of footprints near her vehicle, larger and heavier, matched this theory. But what happened after she entered the woods remains a mystery. Forensic evidence suggests Emily may have been captured shortly after leaving her car. Scratches on nearby trees and disturbed undergrowth point to a struggle. A single earring, identified as Emily's, was found snagged on a low-hanging branch, as if torn off in haste. But the lack of further physical evidence leaves a haunting question. Was Emily taken alive? And if so, where? Despite the mountain of evidence, Emily Harper's disappearance remains unsolved. The photographs, the duffel bag, and the chilling note suggest a level of planning and cruelty that still chills investigators to this day. Was Emily the victim of a deranged stalker? Or was she caught up in something far larger and more dangerous than anyone realized? The answer, like Emily herself, remains lost in the shadows of Ridgewood Forest. The disappearance of Emily Harper left a community shaken and desperate for answers. The evidence uncovered, a chilling collection of photographs, a bloodied shirt, and the menacing note, painted a disturbing picture, but it stopped short of providing closure. For weeks, investigators and volunteers combed Ridgewood Forest, determined to uncover what had happened to Emily. Despite their efforts, no trace of her was ever found beyond those haunting items. As word of Emily's disappearance spread, it captivated the nation. True crime enthusiasts, amateur sleuths, and conspiracy theorists alike descended upon the case, dissecting every piece of evidence and theorizing about what might have happened. Online forums lit up with discussions, some suggesting that Emily had fallen victim to a stalker or an obsessed admirer. Others speculated that her final text message indicated she'd uncovered something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. Several theories quickly gained traction. The first and most plausible was that Emily had been targeted by a stalker, someone who had meticulously planned her abduction. The photographs found in the metal container supported this theory, as did the farmer's report of a black SUV trailing her car. But if this was the case, the identity of the stalker remains a mystery to this day. Another theory proposed that Emily had inadvertently uncovered something dangerous, possibly a criminal operation or a secret that someone was desperate to keep hidden. The burner phone found in the forest fueled speculation that her disappearance was linked to illegal activity, though no definitive connections were ever made. Some questioned whether Emily had been lured into the woods under false pretenses. Her final text, a desperate attempt to warn someone before it was too late. One of the most debated aspects of the case is the note found in the duffel bag. "You should have stayed quiet." The message raises haunting questions. Had Emily been threatened before her disappearance? Did she know her abductor? And if so, why hadn't she told anyone? Friends and family insist that Emily had never mentioned feeling unsafe or being followed, yet the evidence suggests she had been under surveillance for weeks, if not longer. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the case remains unsolved. The black SUV was never located. The fingerprints on the photographs and burner phone did not match anyone in the database. And Emily's final text message, "I need help. Someone's following me," remains the most chilling clue of all. Who was following her that night? And why? For Emily's family, the lack of closure is the hardest part. Her parents, who still live in the same cottage she once called home, keep her room exactly as it was, hoping that one day she'll return. They've held vigils every year since her disappearance, lighting candles and praying for answers. But with each passing day, hope grows dimmer, and the questions only multiply. The case of Emily Harper has become one of the most enduring mysteries of the decade, inspiring documentaries, podcasts, and endless speculation. But behind the headlines and theories lies a family still grieving, a community still haunted, and a forest that seems to hold its secrets tightly. Whether Emily's disappearance was the result of a calculated abduction, a chance encounter with a predator, or something even more unexplainable, one thing is certain: her story will never be forgotten. What do you think happened to Emily Harper? Was she the victim of a stalker, or could her disappearance be linked to something far darker? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to help keep Emily's story alive. Until next time, stay safe and always trust your instincts.